morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Premiani. I'm the Chief Programs Officer at the New Jersey Historical Commission. Thank you for joining us today. So happy to have you all here with us, and thank you for considering a DEAI grant. I am going to ask our director, Sarah Curitin, to say hello and welcome you all to the session.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We're delighted to see all of you here and to know that you're interested in our DEI grant program. This is our second round. It remains a high priority for the New Jersey Historical Commission, and I'm just thrilled that so many of you have joined us today to consider applying for these funds. I'm going to leave you now in the very capable hands of Nicole Premiani, our Chief Programs Officer. And once again, thank you and good luck with your applications.
Thank you, Sarah. So today's program is going to feature the consultants the Commission has selected to work with you for this round, Dr. Brea Heidelberg and Levon Williams. We also have two of our previous DEAI grantees we offered around in 2023. So we have two of our grantees from the past joining us from the Trent House Association and from Cape May MAC, or the Mid-Atlantic Center for the Arts. So thank you all for being here with us this morning. For now, I'm going to share some highlights of the grant program. I'm not going to delve too deeply into the application and to the guidelines in this session, because I really wanted this to be an opportunity for you to hear from the consultants and from previous grantees. But I will be hosting a series of office hours, and that's where we can get into deeper questions about guidelines and applications. But I will share some highlights with you. And before I get to that, I do want to acknowledge the American Alliance for Museums for its work on the Facing Change, Advancing Museum Board Diversity and Inclusion Initiative. This was a multi-year project working toward the goal of inclusion in our national museums. And it really informed the development of the first round of the Commission's DEI grant program, and now the second round as well. I do want to make sure that you go to our website, go to our grants opportunities page on the website, and take a look at the grant guidelines. And you'll see links to the Facing Change initiative, and then to a number of resources that the AAM offers on DEAI. So I hope you take an opportunity to take a look at that. So let's get into just some of the highlights of the program. And I also want to mention to you, you don't have to take notes on my presentation, because everything I'm telling you is in our guidelines and on our website. So I'm going to give you a few pieces of information, but all of this is written somewhere else, so don't worry. I decided not to do a slide presentation for today because I wanted to be quick. So our application deadline is March 14th, 2025. You're going to apply on the Commission's website using the JOT form application, so not in Sage. To be eligible to apply for the grant opportunity, you have to be a nonprofit history organization based in New Jersey with a mission devoted to New Jersey history. I have had some questions from other organizations. Unfortunately, we had to be a little bit strict about the eligibility for the program because we have extremely limited funds. So we are limiting it to organizations with a mission devoted to New Jersey history. You can apply for up to $20,000. There is not a match requirement for the grant, but certainly if you would like to propose a project that exceeds that maximum limit, you're certainly encouraged to apply your own funds, or maybe you can get funding from other funders. The grant period is expected to begin in June of 2025 and run through June of 2026. So now let's talk a little bit about the two types of grants. We have DEAI implementation grants, which we're offering based on the feedback from our previous grantees. These grants can be applied to a variety of projects, which can include additional training for the staff and board, audience data collection projects, integrating DEAI into a strategic plan, developing evaluative tools that help measure DEAI progress and consistency, and developing new or updating program and interpretive plans. So this is a list of examples. It's not necessarily an exhaustive list. If you're looking to apply for an implementation grant that is not what we've listed in the guidelines, or is different from what we've listed in the guidelines, please just contact me and we'll talk things through. This is the first time we're doing this, so it's possible that we would consider other types of implementation grants. If you are applying for an implementation grant, you can bring in your own consultant. You can choose a consultant of your own. Or you can use the two consultants that we have selected for the training grants. So if you're doing the implementation grant, you can use your own consultant, or you can use one that the commission has selected for you. Now, if you are applying for a training grant, you must meet with and decide who you would like to work with. So you would meet with Dr. Brea Heidelberg, and you would meet with Levon Williams, and you would decide who you'd like to work with on your training grant. So we're doing things a little bit differently for the training grants this round. We selected the two consultants. In the first round, we had a team of consultants. We selected a team of consultants that worked with all of the grantees. So as I mentioned, prior to applying for your grant, you're going to want to meet with Brea and Levon, and you're going to want to determine who you'd like to work with. You're going to need to give them time to prepare a proposal that's going to be submitted with your application. So you need to be doing that now. So right after the webinar, go to our website, or take the notes from the chat and contact Brea and Levon, and schedule your meeting and start your work with them. So let's see, what else did I want to say about the training grants? So with the training grant, what you'll receive is you'll receive unconscious bias training. You'll also receive an analysis of your current program, structure, and policies and practices, and guidance on creating a new on creating a DEAI plan. So that's the end goal, is to create that DEAI plan. And so again, before I introduce Dr. Heidelberg, I will just underscore again to please really start contacting the consultants now. The deadline is March 14th, but there's a lot of work to do in between that time. So now I'm going to turn to presenting Dr. Heidelberg. Our consultants are being presented in alphabetical order. They're also listed in alphabetical order on our website and in our guidelines. We are going to ask you to respond to a poll at the end of the presentations to ask you if you're considering applying for either a training or an implementation grant. And we also have an option for if you're not sure yet. Also, feel free to post your questions in the chat as we move through the program. Commission staff and the 2023 grantees are going to be taking questions, but if you have questions for our consultants, I want you to contact them directly. So you'll email them directly. So with that, I'm going to turn to Dr. Heidelberg, who is an organizational management consultant, educator, and research. Her research and consulting work focuses on equity and restorative justice throughout the cultural ecosystem. Dr. Heidelberg's ongoing research interests include human resources theory and practice, and the intellectual history and professionalization of the field of arts and culture management. Her consulting work helps organizations operate efficiently, equitably, and humanely. This includes supporting organizations in executive searches, employee and board member recruitment and retention, stakeholder engagement and empowerment, organizational assessments, and capacity building workshop facilitation. She's also helped several granting institutions at the local, state, and federal levels reimagine their processes to be more equitable and inclusive. Her forthcoming book, Human Resources in the Arts, provides cultural administrators and practical advice on how to create and maintain healthy and vibrant organizations. Dr. Heidelberg earned her master's degree in human resource development from Villanova University and her doctorate in arts administration, education, and policy from the Ohio State University. Brea, thank you and welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to share my slides. We all know that you have to announce that for the Zoom gods to allow the things to happen. So I've made my sacrifice. Right. So I'm gonna jump right in. Hopefully I won't need the entire time, especially since I didn't know Nicole was gonna read the bio. So you've got a lot of the stuff up here. My name is Brea, she, her pronouns. My arts background is as a dancer. I started as a dancer and choreographer, and transitioned into arts management in graduate school. My day job is as associate professor. I teach in the Department of Arts and Entertainment Management at Drexel, and I teach classes at both the graduate and undergraduate levels. I do a lot of equity-centered leadership coaching, and this is for leaders at various stages in their career who are interested in making their workspaces and the people that they the ways that they care for the people that work for them more equitable and inclusive. My research areas, which are related to the work that I'll be hopefully doing with some of you are industrial psychology and organizational culture, DEI in organizational settings, cohort learning and cultural policy. Most of my work focuses on adapting and adopting traditional human resources and industrial psychology theories into manageable and reasonable applications for nonprofit, human services nonprofits, and arts and cultural institutions. In practice, what that works out to is equity-centered human resources, organizational development and structuring, and organizational and program evaluation. So a little bit about the philosophy of what I and my colleagues, my practice partners do. Some foundational premises that we base all of our work and our the ways that we do what we do. Systems replicate and protect themselves. You don't necessarily need an evil henchman twirling their mustache in order to have an inequitable workspace that doesn't feel good to everyone. Um, Systemic inequity will also protect itself. And so if you aren't actively dismantling those harmful practices, then putting good stuff on top of bad stuff doesn't necessarily make the bad stuff good, right? Icing on top of Brussels sprouts does not make cake, right? Hearts and minds are great. I love it when people actually really buy into the ideas of creating equitable systems and perpetuating healthy workplaces. But I don't care as much about that as I do about the behaviors. So act right at work, and that's the main thing. The other thing is that equity work is hard. So without clear boundaries and accountability measures, even if people don't mean to, they will slip back and revert to old behaviors. If you've ever, I mean, especially since New Year's has just passed, if you've ever tried a new workout regimen, started running for the first time, tried to change your diet, everything's gangbusters on Monday morning, because that's usually when people try to start making those changes in their lives. But the second that grant application is due, the second your kid barfs, the second you stub your toe, you tend to want the unhealthy foods. You tend to not want to go to the gym. You tend to revert back to old behaviors. And equity work is exactly the same. So why is equity work particularly hard in cultural organizations? There's often little or no division of labor. The difficulty of the slash or the and or positions that many of us have held or do hold in our cultural institutions. There's this vocational aspect of what a lot of people in cultural organizations do. And so it can be difficult to try to change what you're doing. And that's because you are so intrinsically tied to the mission and the ways that you've already been doing the work, the entrenched habits and norms, especially when you're not aware of the inequities or the harm that might be caused by them. You're also juggling way more than most people do in for-profit organizations where the divisions of labor are much clearer. And finally, the research, the toolkits, the scholarship isn't designed for your organization specifically. And as I mentioned before, that's most of what my research is adapting and adopting that work into our contexts. And so the approach for the work that is outlined The organizational audit, so my practice has a process that we've used. We've helped over 150 organizations, small, mid-sized, volunteer-led, huge, museums, education embedded institutions, a wide swath of organizational structures have been helped by this method. We start off with a deep dive on the organizational documents. So anything that's written down about your organization, both internal and external. We do up to the first 5 pages of a Google search, all of your social media, and then we ask for a series of your internal documents, employee handbook, your recruitment and selection protocols and procedures. If you have those written down, not all of us do. Things that we all have on our to-do list, I'm sure. And once we have that information, we use our findings from that to create a survey that is context specific or organization specific. And we also offer one-on-one semi-structured interviews with everyone within the organization. These are opt-in interviews, so we encourage organizations to not compel people to engage in that particular part of the process if they would not like to. We take all of that stuff and we create a final report and presentation, which can be in person or virtual, depending on how we schedule things. We outline the organizational strengths and areas for learning and improvement, and we come up with a plan for engagement. For this particular engagement, because you are, as far as the grant is concerned, limited to the organizational equity / anti-bias training, that would be the primary thing, but we do provide a list of other types of workshops and learnings that your organization might want to engage in order to address some of the things that whatever we find in the, as a result of the audit process. For the training, we offer 3 one-hour sessions. Those are intended to be virtual that take a global look, organizational look, and personal view of how equity works. So each of those sessions build upon one another. There are add-on options. As Nicole mentioned, you also have the opportunity or the prerogative to supplement the funds from the grant. If you would like to have a longer session, if you would like that session to be in person, there would be add-on options available for that. Finally, DEI plan development. So once you have the report and the trainings under your belt, we would engage in monthly meetings where my team and I would provide you with some discussion points. We would also be talking about what's happening in the organization at that particular point in time and what piece of the DEI plan you want to work on in between sessions. We do have a template that we offer to give you so that you're not just starting from scratch. I don't even know what a DI plan is, what all should be included. We provide a template and it's a living document that you can add things to, or if there are things that aren't necessarily germane to your organization, those parts don't have to be included. So the organization does some work in between those meetings, and then at the end, you as the organization would draft the DEI plan. Just want to make it clear, some organizations ask. ISO does not write DEI plans because then there's no buy-in from the people that are supposed to be doing the work. It's not written in your language. It's not written in ways that are meaningful to you. So we do require organizations to write their plan. Once they have what they think is a finalized draft, we review the document and provide deep feedback on areas based on our knowledge from the organizational equity audit about things that are going to be particularly sticky or great or easy for your organization, and some things that might need some additional resources or a heavier lift. And that's the overview of the way that we would approach that. Since we're recording this, you'll have this contact information there, but feel free to email with any questions or to set up a time to chat about your particular organization.
Thank you, Brea, so much. And yes, a couple of points that I do want to also underscore, as Brea mentioned in her presentation. Absolutely, if you, unfortunately, the commission has had to limit its grants to that $20,000 maximum, but you can certainly work with the consultants to consider more beyond the bias training and the organizational analysis. And I hope that everyone is able to do that. I know sometimes it's hard to find additional funds, but we had to limit it to the bias training and the organizational analysis because we only have that $20,000 to offer for each. But please, if you are able to, definitely expand. So thank you again so much, Brea, for the presentation. I think you gave everyone a really good sense of what it would be like to work with you. And I'm sure many organizations are going to contact you and Levon and want to work with both of you. I would want to work with both of you. I am now going to introduce our second consultant, our second speaker, who is Levon Williams. Levon is a consultant, a facilitator, a change agent, and a capacity builder. He serves as a passionate thought partner and institutional organizer, guiding organizations through transformative change processes with his consulting firm rooted in equity. Levon was formerly a Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, and Inclusion Senior Fellow for the American Alliance for Museums Facing Change Initiative, the initiative I mentioned at the beginning of the program. So he works directly with boards of trustees to create more inclusive and equitable board cultures. He also served as a lead mediator at the Community Justice and Mediation Center in Bloomington, Indiana, where he was trained in community mediation and restorative justice practices. Since 2019, Levon has collaborated with arts and culture leaders and staff teams to support them in navigating important and challenging conversations. Levon holds master's degrees in nonprofit management and arts administration from Indiana University. Levon, welcome.
Thanks so much, Nicole. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. And welcome to everyone who's here. Thank you for being here. Again, as Nicole mentioned, my name is Levon Williams. I use he, him pronouns. I am based in Reston, Virginia, about 40 miles outside of Washington, D.C., on the unceded land of the Manahoac people. I'm excited to be here, excited to be a part of this grant project, and really looking forward to the opportunity to work with those who are interested in the way that we, Rooted in Equity, has decided to structure our work on the grant. And so I'll just start a little bit, talking a little bit about who we are, myself and the people that I practice with. And I think the best way to do that is kind of talk a little bit about our values. The first value of Rooted in Equity is that we encourage open and courageous communication, creating an environment where difficult conversations and generative conflict lead to meaningful growth. That's very important to us because the idea of communicating bravely is where the beginning of the shift and the change that folks are seeking to see can happen. Next is we encourage curiosity and risk-taking. We try to cultivate a culture where curiosity is celebrated in the pursuit of knowledge, and it is driving our continuous learning. And we also push to disrupt perfectionism by embracing that along the way mistakes will happen, and those are valuable learning opportunities. Next, we talk about navigating the nuance. And what we mean by that is really thinking about moving away from a binary either or way of thinking and really thinking about a wide range of possibilities when we are working together. We also believe that accountability, as Brea mentioned as well, and follow through are key to building a successful work culture. And following through deepens trust, preserves time and resources, and leads to results. And we take care to create plans and procedures that allow space for flexibility, but also holding each other accountable in a compassionate way. This work can be very challenging. And so another value that Rooted in Equity leans into is trying to find the joy where it is. And because joy is a powerful force in this work, and we seek moments of celebration and positivity throughout the process. Last but not least, we try to champion an abundance mindset, which means we focus on and leverage strengths, assets, and possibilities. We acknowledge opportunities for growth and change, and we believe that there is opportunity for success for everyone in a journey towards more equitable and inclusive practices. Next, I'm going to talk just a little bit about Rooted in Equity's approach. And this is important for folks who are looking to work with us. And so we try to be really forward with this. We are race forward. We work to name and address the impact of race in all situations. We know that if it's not explicitly identified, race can often go unnamed in change processes. We also know that race represents the largest indicator of disparity and injustice in the United States. And because of that, if we can begin to start there with the hardest problem, that will give us guidance on how to disrupt other oppressive systems and structures that exist in our organizations. We analyze power. This is another one that we try to be very forthright about. We strive to uncover and understand the various ways in which power, privilege, and influence shape decision-making and resource allocation. By analyzing power, we seek to help organizations identify and address systemic inequities, ensuring that their change efforts are informed by those very power dynamics. We are people-centered and participatory. We place people at the heart of our work. We believe in prioritizing people's voices, experiences, and personal well-being. Sustainable change occurs when people's needs, aspirations, and perspectives are at the forefront of strategy and decision-making. We utilize an asset-based orientation. And again, this goes back to our values. We focus on identifying and leveraging the strengths and assets that individuals and organizations possess. And last but not least, at Rooted in Equity, we are very outcomes focused. We believe that when organizations are rooted in equity, transformation and genuine growth can take place and can be seen and felt in the outcomes that are experienced as the result of the shifts and the changes that an organization makes. Together, we believe that in working with organizations, we make change that matters and matters in terms of the outcomes. So just to talk a little bit about the grant itself and how we'll work, really want to start with talking about who we target. And part of this is that we are very invested in the idea that the folks that have the most impact on an organizational culture are those who are the decision makers in that culture, which does not mean that we are subservient to a top-down style, but it does mean that we are really interested in those who hold power in the organization or who seek to have a role in decision-making to be part of the process. And so we're seeking to partner with folks who are senior leaders, board members and DEAI, board and staff DEAI committee members, any mid-level managers, or as we call them, going back to our people-centered approach, we call them people managers, and we're looking for board officers. And we're asking for each organization that we're going to work with, we're looking for 3 to 5 people at a minimum and up to about 15 people maximum for how we are planning to work together. And that leads us into what is our work together and how we will partner in this work. We at Rooted in Equity see ourselves as partners with you. You all, in some ways, are leading the work because we believe the wisdom about how your organization works and how to shift towards more equitable and inclusive practices is within your organization already. The biggest piece that is important to us is we'll be leveraging a cohort models. Like organizations that are supported by Rooted in Equity will participate as part of a cohort with fellow New Jersey historical institutions. And the goal of this for us is to build a DEAI-focused community amongst the organizations that participate while part of this program and hopefully beyond it. This work, as Brea also mentioned, is challenging, ongoing work and nonlinear work. We believe at Rooted in Equity, having other organizations that are part of New Jersey to depend on and to lean on throughout the process is going to be supported. And so going back to, as Nicole has mentioned, the grant components, there's a training component, an auditing component, and a DEI planning component. As part of the training piece, woven into the unconscious bias training, The unconscious bias training will be woven throughout a series that we call the Mindset Series. And through the Mindset Series, we focus on identity, building trust, and analyzing power. And the unconscious bias pieces will be woven throughout that. As part of the way we are approaching the auditing process is that it actually will be a self-guided auditing process of your current policies and practices. And during that process, you'll be getting support from Rooted in Equity over the time that you all are doing that. And that the information from the audit will be used to inform the DEAI planning, which will begin with a workshop and for each organization that's part of the cohort. And so I will talk a little bit more about which parts are cohort and which parts are for individual organizations in just a moment here. But it is going to be a workshop where we work together with each group and develop a DEI plan, DEI priorities, and an action plan. And so just to break this up a little bit in more of a visual way, the cohort engagement piece really begins with the Mindset Series, which is the training piece. And then from there, there'll be a cohort audit kickoff meeting where we'll talk about the audit process and how Rooted in Equity will be supporting you all throughout that process. And then we'll be doing some organizational level engagement on that self-auditing process, and we'll be providing coaching support throughout that. And then we'll move to the DEA planning kickoff, which is also a cohort piece. And that's where most of the cohort work will end. And similar to what we've done with the organization level engagement for the self-audit, we'll be also doing those planning workshops with each organization that's part of the cohort. Another piece that I think is always important to share with folks when starting is what will be asked of me. And it's very important for those who will be engaged in the cohort and working directly with Rooted in Equity, that there is organizational commitment and that there is individual commitment, because this is ongoing work. And so we ask that you attend all of the cohort-based activities that we do together. For the cohort to really work, we're really going to need that buy-in. We ask that you take the time to complete the assigned tasks as well as possible between meetings. Again, we are not looking for perfection, but we are looking for an investment of time, energy, and resources so that when we are back together in the cohort, or whether we're working with you and your individual organizations, we have a place to start from and build from. As going back to the values, we ask that you bring to the cohort process a spirit of curiosity and healthy risk-taking. When we talk about risk-taking, sometimes that can get people to clench up a little bit, but I want to be very clear that the kind of risk-taking that we're talking about is informed risk-taking, but it is moving away from the status quo and disrupting the status quo where we can. As with all equity-based work, inclusion-based work, there are times, and any time that you are disrupting the status quo, discomfort is a part of it. And we understand those feelings will exist throughout this process. And we ask that you embrace that discomfort, you get curious about what's bringing that discomfort up to the fore. And we really ask that you make the commitment to stay engaged throughout the process. We believe that discomfort often can lead to meaningful growth if pointed in the right direction. And this is a big one for leaders. Each time I work with them, is we ask that you give yourself permission to learn in public. Sometimes as leaders, we are looked at to have all the answers, to know exactly what to do at any given moment. But that's not what this cohort is about. This cohort is really about being in community with fellow organizations, fellow leaders who are committed to equity and inclusion and who are looking to grow together. So we ask that you give yourself permission to learn in public. And again, we look forward to working with you. I know the questions will come a little bit later, but please feel free to reach out to me directly at levon.williams@rootedinequity.com or reach me via the Rooted in Equity website. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Levon. So, I think that you've all been given a very good opportunity to hear from both Brea and Levon and to get a sense of what they offer and their approach and what it would be like to work with them. So, please definitely start contacting them right away. I also want to mention that I think one of the lessons the commission learned going through the first round of grants is that we were hearing from some of our grantees that that there was a little bit more of a time commitment that they needed to make to the work than they had originally expected going into the work. So in terms of thinking about a training grant, do consider the amount of meetings, the amount of times you're going to need to bring your staff and your board together, the work that you're going to need to do individually with the consultants, and then there's probably work that there is going to be work that you'll need to do on your own outside of working with either Brea or Levon with your staff and your board. So do take that into consideration. I know we had a couple of grantees that really struggled a bit with the time commitment, primarily because some of them had construction projects going on. So their attention was a little bit diverted sometimes. So do think about what's going on in your organization. Do you have the time and do you have the capacity right now to make the commitment to doing a training grant? Because it's definitely a time commitment, as Levon mentioned. And again, I'll just say, going into the program, we had to go through a state procurement process to bring Levon and Brea on board to work with the program. And the state procurement process is a little challenging. And there were times where it looked like things weren't going to be moving forward the way we wanted them to move forward. And I didn't want to offer this program without offering you Levon and Brea. So I think that they are really two of the highest quality professionals working in this area. Please, please take the opportunity to meet with them and to work with them. Funds at the commission are extremely, extremely limited. I do not know if we are going to be able to offer another round of DEAI grants specifically. It's not to say that we wouldn't continue our work in DEAI, either through other programs, incorporating into our other programs. There is another grant opportunity coming up in the summer through our cultural and financial stabilization program with the Cultural Trust. But do take advantage of this opportunity to work with Brea and Levon now, and take the opportunity to please apply for the grant. So now we're going to shift the program and we're going to talk to two of our previous grantees from our 2023 round. I want to thank them both for their willingness to share their work and to really thank them for their commitment to doing the work every day, because that's exactly what they're doing. The beauty of the DEAI program is that there is not a budget eligibility requirement. So this opens the grant opportunity to organizations of all sizes. In the first round, we had grantees with multi-million-dollar budgets, and we had some with no paid staff or very little paid staff. When investing in DEI work, our primary consideration is an organization's commitment to the work. So we're not looking for a large budget or a large staff. We're looking to see that organizations are reflective and that they ask questions about how they connect to people and to communities. We're looking for organizations that are willing to make necessary changes to make audiences, boards, and staff feel connected to their work and to their organization. So DEAI work is a constant process. We talk about this a lot. It's something that never ends. You may have had education and training, but there's always more to learn from within this area of DEAI. So I'm very happy to welcome and to introduce Jody Alessandrine, who is the Director and Chief Executive Officer of Cape May MAC, or the Mid-Atlantic Center for the Arts. Also, Mary Stewart is the Chief Outreach Strategist with Cape May MAC. And Jody and Mary are going to talk to you about how they're continuing their work with new and existing partners. They continue to expand training to additional staff, and they're working to ensure that new and existing programming is inclusive. One of the things that's really important about Cape May MAC and something that they're doing is they're doing this reflecting and this assessing. So they're not just thinking about the new things that they are going to be incorporating into their work, but they're also thinking about what are they doing now and what do they need to do differently in order to make their work more inclusive. So when I say that the Commission is looking to invest in organizations with a commitment to the concept of inclusion, this is what I mean. They're engaged in a process of constant assessment and reflection, and they're continuing what they're doing already, but they're expanding on it, expanding upon it as well. So Jody and Mary, welcome, and thank you so much for being here and for agreeing to share your experiences.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And thank you again, everyone at the Historical Commission for their support. The initial grant was timely, and we like to think that we were pretty good stewards of that funding, both from the training standpoint and from implementation. Mary has been with the organization for almost 38 years, and has seen the organization evolve and the times evolve. So I thought maybe, Mary, if you could maybe just start out with talking about how, based on our experience and your experience, and how we worked with the board and staff to craft a DEAI team to start out with, which was actually done before the initial grant round was even proposed.
Yeah, we consider ourselves storytellers of 200 years of history in the Cape May area. We have, the Emlyn Physic Estate, which is 1879 mansion. We have the Cape May Lighthouse, 1859, and the World War II tower, which is 1942. So we have a sort of this continuum of history of Cape May that we talk about. And we really pretty much talked about it in the lens of kind of who were we were really telling one side of the story. We were telling a story about visitors to Cape May, but we weren't telling the story about the residents who lived here, who took care of things, who provided services. We weren't talking about the contribution of women. We weren't talking about the fact that Cape May is one of the original inhabitants of the indigenous Americans, the Lenni Lenape. Our first visitors were Lenni Lenape. And so we created our board created a really thoughtful team. It's board, it's staff, it's volunteers, but we also went out and identified community members that we thought could help us fill in the gaps. And through this committee meeting quarterly, predating grant funding, we've set goals for ourselves, and there's some that are really hard. We live in an area that's 92% non-diverse. So staffing is difficult for us, but we work with other organizations. We work with our local NAACP. We work with churches. We work with other organizations like the Harriet Tubman Museum and the Center for Community Arts, because it extends our reach. The one thing where we could affect change, I guess, relatively quickly, and where we found a volume of information was, who were these people who were all these people that came to Cape May? Who were these people to whom the lighthouse was a beacon? Who were these people who served in our area, served in World War II? And, through community participation, through research, our curator has been involved, and a registrar. we've been able to infuse a kind of vaster recounting of our area's history. We know that the Emlyn Physick estate, we know a lot about Dr. Physick and his mother. They were wealthy Philadelphians. But now we know about the people that kept their household running. We know about the domestic servants who were largely members of Cape May's Black community. We know about the immigrants that worked on the estate, the carriage men, gardeners, people like that. Now we know about the stops in Cape May. When we do our historic district trolley tours and we talk about Victorian architecture, we also talk about the locations in Cape May that were listed in the Green Book for the Negro motorist. So we're trying to make our storytelling much more inclusive. And it's really, it's really the work that our DEAI team has been our kind of leading advocates of this expansion of our storytelling. Does that sort of encapsulate it, Jody?
It does. And I'd like to maybe just point out some more specific things that Mary alluded to, that, on the ground, actual implementation of some of those, the plans. As she mentioned, we carefully selected the members of the team to have a nice representation from board staff. Staff that, one example of our staff persons is a white woman who has adopted Black children and is raised them and is actually raising some of her grandchildren as well, to have various viewpoints on our DEI team. We have met, our last meeting was the 13th meeting. We meet quarterly. We review our DEI plan regularly. In addition to those 13 meetings, we also had 7 meetings with our Historical Commission appointed consultant for us to create the DEI plan. As Mary mentioned, in our exhibits here at the Carroll Gallery on the estate, we partner every year with the Center for Community Arts, which is a local Black historic organization. And we that's our winter exhibit that we just had the grand opening on MLK Day, and that runs through usually mid to the end of March. This year it's March 23rd. I'll get to that in a second, but in our exhibit on an annual basis always reflects what is our annual tour theme. And as Mary mentioned, a couple of years ago, one of our annual exhibit, which runs from April through October, was the story where all of the utensils and work tools that were used on the estate. Some of them actually had Dr. Physick's name engraved in them and his initials. And then we told the story about the workforce. Most of them were local Cape May or West Cape May Black folks, as well as having the story about some of the newer immigrants. Interesting story about an Irishman that always got a laugh out of some people who were tour goers, and we also tell the story about the Physick family themselves. They were incredibly progressive. Dr. Physick sponsored the first woman to be on the Cape May County Association of Physicians, the first Black man. He paid tuition for minorities for dental school and veterinary school. So a lot of really neat stories to tell. Mrs. Ralston, his mother, actually, there was one of their house workers was in an abusive relationship, a marriage, and Mrs. Ralston bought the house. And then once the husband was out of the picture, she sold it back to the woman for $1. So the stories that we were able to uncover by being more engaged and interested in the topic were incredible, and things that we didn't even know about heretofore. And we're really glad that this process really kind of ushered us in that direction to learn more about the people that are responsible for us being here. Another thing that we did for the lighthouse, what was it, Mayor? The 140th anniversary of the lighthouse. We did a exposition with new lighthouse panels. One of the lighthouse panels tells the story of enslaved people who were escaping a slave state, and at the time, Virginia. They went to Maryland through Delaware and came across the Delaware Bay. So we used the opportunity of the lighthouse to tell a lot of different stories, and also the story of the first unofficial woman lighthouse keeper. Her husband was the lighthouse keeper, and he took sick, and she assumed those responsibilities and did so for a significant period of time, such that the federal government acknowledged her. We take our DEI, not only our DEI plan is reviewed at our DEI meetings, but it's an integral topic of our board and staff twice a year strategic planning sessions. In fact, we just had our winter one this past Friday. So it's, again, an evolving document. It's not just a static document. We additionally paid for microaggression unconscious bias training from the consultant that we had with the first grant round of Marissa McMickens Blair. And we had that unconscious bias training, almost like a train the trainer for our directors and upper management. And board members were invited to that as well. Our goal is to be able to extend that training to frontline employees. I mentioned every year that we do a winter exhibit in concert with the CCA. We're really proud to say that the Historical Commission is recognizing last year's exhibit, which was Line in the Sand, a story about the segregated beaches of both Cape May and Atlantic City. And with that, in addition to CCA, we partnered with the Chicken Bone Beach Historical Foundation of Atlantic City, with whom I had worked with in a different aspect of my career when I worked in Atlantic City, and a local artist, Chanel Renee. And we're being recognized on March 4th for the exhibit. And in fact, Channel 10 from Philadelphia was down here yesterday to talk about that and interviewed us. The exhibit this year is Roots of Black Travel, the Green Book in Cape May and Wildwood. And as I mentioned, that was just, the grand opening was this past Monday. This year will be the fourth year that our DEAI team is sponsoring a May program presentation that we partner with the Cape May Stage for the presentation. So again, it's being woven into our programming as well. In addition to our house tour and exhibits, it's also in programs. Mary has been our ADA representative for several years. Mary, do you want to talk about the implementation of American Sign Language at Lessons of History?
Sure. This year we were able to offer one of our major programs, Lessons of History, offer it as a sign interpreted program. It's been difficult for us to have the resources here in Cape May County, but now there is one of the local tech schools offering American Sign Language classes. We're hoping to also provide sign language interpretation to some of our concerts during the music festival, the ones that involve vocal music. And we're also looking at it, that we have a program scheduled in May about the Green Book. We're hoping to offer it there. And also we have a program scheduled in June, a Lunch and Learn program. We offer these twice a month at noon on Wednesday. And we'll have Rick Gefkin returning to us to talk more about enslavement in New Jersey and particularly in Cape May County. So that's a partnership with the Greater Cape May Historical Society. Cape May is a wonderful place, and how the organizations cooperate with one another, which really amplifies our resources. And we've also started offering sign language interpreted tours, trolley tours, now that we've established a connection with the deaf and hard of hearing community in the area. It's been a hope of ours for a long time, and I'm really happy that it's finally coming to fruition.
And we continue, part of our museum education is at the local blind center, and Mary is the general.
Yeah, once a month we go to
representative.
the Blind Center of the Jersey Cape with some sort of programming, mostly history programming, but occasionally music programming. We've been doing that for, I don't know, maybe 15 years or so. It's actually very rewarding programming for the presenters, and I hope for the participants.
And where we stand is, I guess, what our participation in the next grant round would be ideally, is to take the microaggressions and unconscious bias and extend that to our frontline staff. We have, on a full-time basis, we have 18 full-time employees. We have 12 permanent part-time employees that are administrative, that work anywhere from 15 to 30 hours a week. And then we have 175 part-time and seasonal employees, most of those being guides, trolley drivers, interpreters, observers, lighthouse keepers, etc., trolley drivers. So if you know anybody with CDL license, we always need those. And we have over 300 volunteers. In 2023, we had both public and private tours and events. We had 8,786 different things on our calendar, and we operate 362 days a year. Our budget is $4.5 million in receipts and disbursements. So it gives you an idea of the size, because as Nicole had mentioned, the grant program included smaller organizations and larger ones like ours. So thanks again for allowing us to participate.
Well, thank you, Jody and Mary, so much for sharing all of that. I think people have a very good sense of how you're using your plan, and it is a living document, and you're really using it, and you're taking DEAI and integrating it into so many things and so many parts of your organization. So thank you again for sharing. Yes, Cape May MAC is certainly one of our largest organizations in New Jersey, as many of you know. But that does not matter. You do not have to have a large budget. Our next speaker is coming from an organization that's a little bit on the smaller side, but the work that has been done, the commitment to the local community is outstanding. They are a model. So let me get to Samuel Stevens is our final speaker for today. He's the executive director at the Trent House Association. He also served as a trustee on the board at the Trent House Association for many years. So you'll hear very shortly that the commitment to inclusion is truly something that is embedded in the roots of the organization. They use the DEAI grant to strengthen the existing goals in their strategic plan to build relationships with communities. A new grant opportunity from a new funder enabled them to hire a bilingual consultant to work on further engaging the Spanish-speaking community in Trenton. The Trent House is also expanding its outreach and programs to African American middle and high school students. They're continuing a partnership with the Puerto Rican community and friends, and now they have a relationship with the Spanish language department at the College of New Jersey. So I'm going to turn it over to Samuel Stevens. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks very much. I'm excited to be here. So great to hear about other organizations doing the same work. And I'm going to mention the idea of the cohort is a great one, because so many of us who are working in this field get so caught up in our day-to-day work that we don't have an opportunity to really learn and share with each other. So thank you for that. That was great. So I will share my screen here because I have a few little slides. First of all, we are very different from Cape May Mac in the sense of not only being a different part of the state, a different demographic part of the state, but we're also very small. I'm a volunteer executive director, and we have a one part-time staff person. But you know, small can be mighty, and so we started, and we're on our way. So let me tell you a little bit about the William Trent House, built in 1719. It's on the homeland of the Lenape and their ancestors, and we've had archaeological evidence from as long ago as 6,000 years. The first European was an English Quaker with an enslaved African listed in his estate. William Trent, who built the house, participated in the domestic slave trade. He had a 1,000-acre plantation where Trenton is now, and people who lived and worked on his plantation included at least 11 enslaved people of African descent. So we have a history of enslavement at the William Trent House. Where we started the DEAI grant, we had been aware for a long time of this history. But for many years, it was not really brought to the fore, as you might imagine. And so it wasn't until about 2010, 2011 that we began to change that. And in 2017, we co-founded with the Stoutsburg Sauerland African American Museum, 1804 consultants, a group called the Sankofa Collaborative. I hope some of you have heard of that. It is.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me. I sneezed.
Oh, sorry. Gesundheit, Mary. And we had a strategic plan that we developed in the early 2020. And we changed our mission statement. It was no longer about preserving the house and preserving, the furniture and all of that. It was about sharing the authentic history, the stories, as we just heard about, of the house, property, and people with our communities. And two things: that history goes back to the Lenape and it goes forward to today. And so like Cape May Mac, we're telling lots of diverse stories. One of our strategic goals was to become relevant to diverse communities. And so that was where we came into the DEAI plan. We also came in with a board that small, but that had 8 trustees of color, mostly African American, but also Hispanic. And that was a strength for us because we were able to draw on their knowledge, their commitment, and their connections in the community. So since and before 2023, we had expanded our interpretation and programming. So we received grants to do that already. In the house, we are focused on the Trent household, including those 11 enslaved people. We have mannequins and posters and other artifacts there incorporated into our tours and interpretation. And every year that we've been keeping track, 1/3 or more of our public programs are focused on the history and culture of African Americans, Hispanics, and Native Americans. So we sort of came in with some background, but we also knew we had challenges. So right now, Trenton is about equally African American and Hispanic in our residents, and the rest are, a mix of everybody else. and our Hispanic community is growing. It is a combination of both longtime residents here, people from Puerto Rico and people from Mexico, but also newcomers from Central America and the islands. One of the things we were, and that was a challenge to us because we have now 2 constituencies that we want to try to serve and engage and make our story relevant to. And also, while our broadened interpretation was becoming known outside of Trenton, Trent House was still seen as not a place that was welcoming, relevant, perhaps even a place of where bad things were happening by many of our city residents. We're also in a location in the city that is not in a neighborhood. It's not where people are passing by. We're surrounded by state parking lots and state office buildings. So, you know, many people who drive by still don't know what we are. So we also had no plans or specific goals to implement that strategic plan of becoming more relevant to communities in our own city. So this was what we wanted to address, sort of what was our new context, the changing demographic context of our town, our reputation within the community, and the fact that we didn't really have any specific thing that we wanted to work on or how to work on it and so on. So that's what we came into the DEAI plan planning process wanting to work on. So the grant was offered us some great opportunities. And I know that from what Jody and Mary mentioned, having a DEAI team is really important. It allowed us to open up conversations among our board members about what were our challenges, about what were the communities we particularly wanted to focus on. And the board members, you know, had some interesting conversations about what did we want to achieve? How did we incorporate history into engagement and so on? So lots of, and those continue. Being required to write a plan with specific goals for particular target communities gave us a set of action steps, and that has been really important. And our DEAI consultant team helped us really get to that point of having specific goals and a set of action steps. And it's been mentioned before by Jody and Mary how important it is to have an accountability mechanism, a way to assess whether we're on the right track, whether our actions are creating the outcomes or impact that we want. So that has really been helpful to us. So during 2023, the DEAI team that we had, which was a combination of board members and several members from the community, with our consultants, identified 3 target communities and specific action steps. And then in July of that year, the association board approved an updated plan. We took our strategic plan that had that goal in it of becoming relevant, providing relevant programming for our communities, and incorporated these new elements from the DEAI plan. So while we had specific targets and goals, they were incorporated into our overall plan. So this is what we had. So our plan was to become relevant to diverse communities, and the communities we identified as priority for action. And that was another interesting thing. We had to make sure that as a board, we felt comfortable setting priorities because we want to be relevant to everybody. But an identified priority action communities, African-American residents of our town in particular, Spanish-speaking residents, and then middle and high school students who are in the Trenton Public Schools. That actually has been the toughest nut to crack, because I don't know how many of you work with your public school district, but sometimes it's difficult to kind of get embedded into their system. So, oh, and if you want to see the plan, it's actually on our website. I mean, again, it's not a long plan. It's really a set of like Cape May Mac has talked about values and vision and so on, but it does have some specific action steps. Here are the lessons. Nicole asked me to think about what were some of our lessons learned. So one of them was taking the long view and building stepping stones. So you could see that we had started, just like Cape May Mac had started their DEAI work before the grant. We had been doing some of that work, relevant work. But we knew that we needed to think bigger and longer and to build what I call stepping stones or intermediate steps that we could work toward. And so I think that was a lesson that we learned, is that it's great to plan next year's programming, but we really need to think longer term than that. KMAC also talked about partnerships, and this was something that was important to us. So we partnered with the Sankofa Collaborative for many years, but in our local community, we joined forces with, we are now a member of one of the neighborhood associations, which connects us with a particular neighborhood that is heavily Hispanic. We're a member of the Puerto Rican Community and Friends, as Nicole mentioned. We also have done co-programming with the local chapter of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, other kinds of things that we're looking for opportunities. So we're consistently doing that. We're very small. And just like Cape May Mac, with more resources, you still need to partner because you want to reach other people and leverage your own resources. Which leads me into the next thing. So being proactive and taking advantage of resources. So one of the things that I told this to Nicole when we had some earlier conversation, we were not as proactive as we should have been in taking advantage of the resources like the consultants. So I was so happy to see that both the consultants have laid out a very clear pathway, and you should jump on it and make the most use of it. And look for other resources in your community, but also the Historical Commission's team has people who are resources that you can reach out to, and so on. And then using the plan to guide the programs we offer and to obtain resources for implementation. So we were able to use the plan to get other grants. A grant that Nicole mentioned to do engagement with our Spanish-speaking community, but also an inclusive history grant from the Historical Commission that allowed us to look at all the different stories we are telling with all of our different communities and figure out how to pull them all together into some kind of coherent package and upgrade our website, which isn't done yet. So when you go to our website, you're not going to see all the great stuff we're doing. So look for it again in a couple of months. It'll be finished. So those are the things that we learned. It was of great value to us, and we really appreciated the opportunity to work with the commission, to work with the consultants, and also to share our experience here today. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Sam, for giving such a good presentation on all of the work that you've done with the community and where you've started from. Rachel is sharing our poll results now. Thank you, Rachel. I think you can see from both presentations, from Cape May Mac's presentation and to the Trent House, it doesn't matter the size of your staff or the size of your budget. There's certainly DEAI work that everyone can do. It can be very different in focus. You might have a large team, you might have a small team, but there's always work that can be done. So I really want to thank both of our grantees again for joining us today, for sharing your experiences, and for being resources, and really again just for your commitment to the work. It's obvious. There's a reason why this is a competitive grant program. There's a reason why we invested in the organizations we invested in the first round. So you're both great examples of continuing your work. Thank you very much. We are a little bit over our time right now. So thank you for hanging on. Some of you are still with us. I really, really appreciate that. Let me see. I'm not sure I see any questions in our chat. And it looks like the majority of our group is maybe still a little unsure about whether they're going to go for a training grant or an implementation grant. We've got about 23% saying training, 15% saying implementation, and then a much larger percentage saying that they're not sure. So that is fine. I will be sending out information about the DEAI office hours. So hopefully we can work out any questions you have to enable you to decide what type of a grant you'd like to apply for. One of the things I'm not sure that I mentioned about the implementation grant is that if you are coming in for an implementation grant, we are looking to see that you already have a DEAI plan. So some of you actually already have DEAI plans. You didn't go through our first round of DEI grants, but you have taken it upon yourself to work with consultants and do a plan. So you don't have to have had a previous DEAI grant to apply again. But for that implementation grant, you just need to have the DEAI plan. So I see we do have a question. Do you have to go for a training grant first before the implementation grant? Yes. Okay. So I guess so what you really need to have for the implementation grant is you need to have a DEAI plan. You didn't necessarily have to apply to us for a training grant, but we do want to see that there has been a work towards developing a plan. And let's see. I don't see any other questions right now. So I think what I'm going to do then is I am going to thank all of our speakers again. Thank you to our consultants, Levon and Brea. We really appreciate hearing from you today and taking the time to be with us and giving everyone an opportunity to hear about your work. Any closing remarks from our speakers?
Nicole, I was just going to say that there was a second question in there. Wanted to make sure you saw that.
Oh, okay. Where can we find the recording of this for the future? Okay. And Rachel just shared the link, I believe. Okay. So, absolutely. if you don't qualify for a grant, yes, unfortunately, our county partners at the Ocean County Cultural and Heritage Commission are asking this question. And yes, we haven't made the grant opportunity available to the ocean to the county partners, but absolutely these consultants they're out there, they are available for hire. Any other questions? Any questions that I missed?
It doesn't look like it in the chat or the Q&A.
Okay. All right, so we're definitely a little bit over our time, but we still have 23 participants hanging on with us. Thank you guys very much for being with us today. Thanks again to all of our speakers, and we will all be in touch soon. Remember to contact the consultants now, and just thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your time today.
And Janice, if you'd like to hang on, Nicole, there is a question just asking if you can collaborate with another historical society for training.
Sure, absolutely. We don't have any restrictions about that, so I believe that's possible. You would really want to talk to consultants about that, but in the grant program, we don't have any restrictions on that right now.
And I think that's officially the end of the questions. If any others show up, I will make sure to send them your contact information, Nicole. And we reshared the information for both our consultants today. So hopefully people should know where to go.
Thank you. Thank you. It was great to meet you all.
Same. Take care, everyone.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.